Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to talk about the worst books I read in 2021. I do feel the need to mention at the beginning of this video that these are not necessarily horrible books. They are not books that everybody's going to hate. In fact, a lot of these books are books that have great reviews on Goodreads or books that people really love. These are just the books that I personally really did not like. These are basically all my 1 and 2 star books of the year, and I just thought it would be fun to look back. I'm definitely going to do a best books of 2021 as well, so it's not going to be all negative. I've actually never done a negative video on my channel before, so it's totally new for me and not something that I plan on really making a habit of. But I do think at the end of the year it's kind of cool to go back and see the best and worst of things. So that's what we're going to do today. So the first book that I read this year that I really did not vibe with was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. And I know this book and series are super popular. It even had people that don't normally read romance picking up these books, and I think that was part of why I didn't like it. It was so hyped up that I was expecting something, crazy, interesting, and new and unique and just different. And to me, this just read like every other romance book, except for the fact that for whatever reason with this one book, I could not find any chemistry between the characters. I felt like in the book, if the characters were real people, they were saying, oh yeah, we're friends, but the author was like, no, you're gonna be more than that. And they were like, no, but we're friends or acquaintances even. To me, they did not scream couple. The entire book, I felt like there was weird things that happened in this book. She'd be like, oh, I'm scared to go out drinking or whatever, but then she had no problem hooking up with him in the middle of a public park, and I was just what the heck happened? And I don't know, this book just I didn't like it. Like I said, I think I had super high expectations, and I probably would have given this 3 stars if I hadn't had it been hyped up so much to me, but I gave it 2 stars just because I was really had high hopes and they were just not met. And so this was the first one of the year that I didn't really vibe with. I will say I did continue on with this series, and I did like Danny Brown better, and Eve Brown was definitely my favorite. So it definitely was not the series as a whole or even the author. It was just for whatever reason this one particular book I did not like. Next was The Vincent Boyz by Abby Glines, and this one was just, I don't know, I love every Abby Glines book I've ever read except for this one. I gave this one 2 stars. I don't know, I felt like this one just leaned so heavily on the trope that the book almost literally couldn't have stood on its own without it. It was very much bad boy, good girl, and good girl, good boy. There was a whole triangle thing going on. But to me, it was their only defining character traits were that this is the good girl and this is the bad boy. That was all they had to their lives, basically, I felt like. And this girl in this book is deciding between, I think there are 2 cousins she's deciding between, and she is with the good boy one and she wants the bad boy one. And to me it was just weird because she was feeling she couldn't be with the good boy one because they weren't hooking up, basically, and she was well, I can do that with the bad boy one. But she also never said anything about that to the good boy one, so I was why wouldn't you just say something? And also she was convinced that she was a terrible person and that she shouldn't be with this good boy, she should be with the bad boy because she was a bad girl. And for stupid reasons, she didn't like returning her shopping cart to the little cart return in the grocery store parking lot. Those were her exact reasons for why she shouldn't be with this good guy. And I just I really couldn't get into this one at all. I didn't like that. I really felt, like I said, it leaned too much on the trope of that was the entire book was I'm the bad boy, and I just didn't like that. Like I said, this is the only Abby Glines book I've ever read that I didn't like, and so that was kind of surprising for me. Next was Untouchable by Sam Mariano, and this one at the time I had read it, I had not read a ton of dark romances, so I thought maybe I was just not used to their content, but I have read a lot more dark books since this one, and I can honestly say this is still one that I do not like. I gave this one 1 star because the first chapter of this book is this girl being essentially sexually assaulted, or even I would go so far to say being raped by this guy. And that's the guy that is like the love interest in the book. And it's not even a one-time thing. It happens repeatedly throughout the book. And I don't know, that's like my one thing in books that I'm like, I can get behind dubious consent, or even like, you know, when in books, let me just clarify, when the girl is like in her head, she's like on board, but if she's verbalizing no, I can get behind that in a book. Again, let me clarify that, make that very clear, in a book only. But in the case of this book, she was saying no in her head, and she was saying no out loud. So like, it was in no way like dubious consent. Like, there was no consent, period. And I didn't like that this whole book is built on romanticizing that. And so this just like I said, I thought maybe at the time that I was just missing something in like dark romance as a whole because I didn't read a lot of it. But now that, like I said, I've read more, I can definitely say that this is like not the case. This book is just glorifying rape, basically. And that's not something I want to read, not something that... I'm honestly surprised I even made it through that book, because I think if I had picked that book up now, I would have DNF'd it, because it was just a lot. And, like I said, not consensual or appropriate or like anything. Like, there were ways that this book could have been done that would have made sense and I would have been okay with, but it just wasn't. Like, I think the author was almost trying to go for like a consensual non-consent kind of thing, but it really didn't come across that way, especially like the first chapter. Like I said, she's like very clearly, they have no prior agreement or anything. And so, like I said, this could have been written in another way that I think would have been okay, but it just wasn't written that way. So yeah, still a 1-star read for me. Next was True by Erin McCarthy. I hope it's McCarthy. I think that's what it is. And this one I had really high hopes for. It kind of gave me After vibes when I was reading the synopsis. It talks about this guy being hired. He's sort of like the college bad boy, and this girl's friends basically find out she's a virgin and hire this like tattooed bad boy of the campus to like hook up with her. And so I was thinking like it was gonna play out like After. That was like the vibes I was getting, and that just like wasn't the case. Like, she finds out that he was paid like I think less than 50% of the way into the book, and then it was just like nothing happened after that. Like, I don't know, it was just really boring, I think, after that, and it wasn't at all what I was expecting. I didn't really like this one, and like I said, I had really high hopes because I did sort of think I knew where it was going, but I just didn't head in that direction. So this one is still a 2-star for me. Next is Wait For It by Jen McKinley. I went on a whole rant about this book when I read it on my Instagram stories, because this book, as far as I saw, was marketed as a romance everywhere. Like, I never saw this book described as women's fiction or anything. I saw it marketed as a romance. And I picked it up. The cover was what sold me, absolutely, I will admit that. And honestly, this book sucked. Like, I gave this one 2 stars. I remember reading this one. I don't think the main love interests in this book even meet until 60% into this book. Like, they literally don't even meet. They don't even like know each other. She moves into his guest house and thinks he's an old man for most of the first part of the book. And they don't really talk. Like, they occasionally like send notes to each other, but it's not even like them getting to know each other. It's literally like don't go in the pool or whatever. Like, it's just like literally normal like neighbor like renter notes, I guess. And so like for me, the romance was just like non-existent in this book. And then on top of that, this is a spoiler, so I will put a timestamp on the screen if you want to skip ahead to when I'm done talking about this. But in this book, she talks about how many times she's been married. Like, I think she's been married like 3 times, and she's only like 27 or something. And she's talking about how she's not going to do that anymore. She's not going to jump in anything. And at the end of this book, the guy proposes, and she says yes. And I'm like, you've only really been dating for like 2 weeks, and you were just saying how you weren't going to get married again because you realized how stupid you've been in the past, and yet here you are getting engaged again. And so for me, like, the ending was even worse than the whole book, because I was like, I kept thinking about DNFing this one because like they weren't meeting and nothing was happening, but I like kept holding out for the end, and finally like got there, and I was like, really, this is the ending I like waited all this time for? And I think this book was like 400 pages long on top of that. Like, it wasn't even a short book. And it just like wasn't it. Like I said, didn't like the ending, didn't like the beginning didn't, like, there was nothing really that I did like about this book, to be honest. Next was They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. I think I might have given this one 3 stars actually, but that was more so for like the general public. Like, I think other people, like in the grand scheme of things, it's a 3-star book, but for me this was probably a 2-star book, maybe 2.5 stars. But this one is a like mystery book, a YA mystery, and I just found that this book was not explained well. They talk about this secret society a lot, but they never really explain it. And then on top of that, I guessed who the like murderer was that they're trying to find literally, I think, on like page 30. Like, I was barely into this book and I already knew who it was going to be, so it was just like really boring reading the rest of the book after that, because like I knew it was going to happen and it was very obvious. They weren't even trying to hide it, and so I didn't really like that. I don't know if that would have been, because it's a YA book, I don't know if it would have been that obvious to someone younger. Maybe it wouldn't have, but like to me it was just like glaringly obvious, and I'm not someone who's normally that great at picking out things like that in books, so that was why this one was such a disappointment for me. Next was Wicked Saint by Veronica Eden, and I gave this one 2 stars. I want to say that this could have been a 3-star book, but honestly for me it was 2 stars. This is a bully romance, but I found that it was just very YA. It was very tame for a bully romance. Like, when I pick something up like that, I'm expecting something like crazy, and this one was just like, the things he was doing at the beginning were just like very like immature and like, I think, targeting a YA audience. It didn't really get to be more like adult or new adult, I guess, appropriate until like towards the end. I was like, okay, maybe I could see this being like a real bully romance kind of thing. But I don't know, I found this one was kind of boring. I didn't love it. I don't know. I just, like I said, I found a lot of his bullying that he was doing to her was just like immature. And maybe that's because most of the high school bully romances are written like they're college students, even though they're in high school. But this one just like, I didn't love. Maybe if you were in high school and you wanted like a realistic high school one, this might be better. But I didn't love this one. Next was The Matzo Ball by Jean Smeltzer, and this one I really didn't like. I actually DNF'd this one at 40%. I didn't like their relationship. There's also a lot of problematic things with this particular book. If you want to go on Goodreads, you can read literally pretty much any of the reviews and you will see why. But aside from all of the like actual issues with this book, the actual plot itself to me was very boring. It's about 2 30-year-olds who are sort of back together in the same area for the first time since they were 12 when they went to summer camp, and they dated when they were 12. But the thing that bothered me was the fact that they kept acting like that was a real relationship. Like, they'd be like, oh, back when we were 12 he hated this, so like he's not gonna like this now, or oh, I was so in love with her back then and whatever. And I'm like, no, you weren't. Like, really, you were 12. Like, how in love were you really? Like, you weren't even really together. And that just like really bothered me, that they were 30 years old and still acting like this 12-year-old relationship was like the real deal kind of thing. And I really didn't vibe with that. Like I said, I DNF'd at 40%, and there was a ton of other issues with this book as well that I'm not even going to get into in this video, but definitely was a letdown for me, because I was really excited to find a book that was a holiday book but not focusing specifically on Christmas, and so for it to have like that many issues and things was just like a bit of a letdown for me. Next was Meet Me in Paradise by Libby Hubsher. I actually did give this one 3 stars, but I even put in my review I gave it 3 stars solely because I do think there is an audience for this book, and I think it's well written, it's like well done. It's just not at all to me what they are like trying to promote it as. Like, if you look at the cover of this book, it looks like a nice like tropical island, beachy rom-com, like right up my alley, and it is the exact opposite of that. There is not a ton of romance in this book. It is one of the most depressing books I've ever read in my entire life. And on top of that, I knew exactly what was going to happen from the first chapter, even though they kind of try to leave it like as a mystery. And so I didn't like that either. For me personally, this was probably like a 2-star book, and I just didn't love it. If you like books that like are going to make you cry, you'll probably like this one. But I also didn't realize with this one, it is women's fiction, not romance, which was like my first big mistake. But like, in my defense, they do make it look like a romance. Like, when you look at that cover, that doesn't scream women's fiction to me, that screams like rom-com. And so that was like a little disheartening as well. But basically those are all the books that I read this year that I didn't particularly enjoy. Like I said, these obviously, like, there's books on here that may be your favorite books or books that you loved, and that's fine. Like, that's totally cool. I'm not saying that these books are terrible and you should never read any of them. I'm just saying these are the books that for me were the lowest rated of the year. And so that's everything for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I'll see you next time.